You brushed your teeth yet today? Have you drank water yet today? Have you read the new Mega Rare Reward blog? I can't help you with the first two, but I can help you with the third one. Hello boys, it's Tufak. We're coming in with another Yap video. We're doing a Yap video. It's been a minute. I know, it's been a minute. We haven't had a blog that I've really cared enough to come in and give you some juice to talk about. Usually, like, I'll do these if it's a blog that I have something to say, that if it's something I talk about a lot or something that I think about a lot, if they release something talking about it, you know I'm making a video. So today we have the rewards primer. They're talking about the Fractured Archive Raids 4, the question on everyone's mind, the new Mega Rare, the new rewards. What will they be? What can they be? I'm excited. So, first and foremost, before we get into it, I'll just give you some of my upfront thoughts about where we sit in the current reward space. And it's not easy to tackle, let's say. They started off strong. 5-tick, ranged, big bow, T-bow, blasting, awesome. Then we get Tob. They're like, what do we do? 5-tick, big, swinging, scythe, boom. And then Toa comes around, they're like, boys, our work's cut out for us. What do we do? A whole fuck ton of stats jammed into a staff. They didn't cook too long on that one. I think they cooked really long on the first version of it, and then people were like, no, we don't want a one-handed staff or a one-handed wand that's weird and has all this extra shit. Give us 5-tick big blaster. And then they delivered. Their first iteration with the third Mega Rare, they're like, let's get fancy. Let's, step out of our comfort zone. How about the heck of whatever they called it? And everyone said, no, hell no. We don't want this complicated ass, ridiculous wand with all these extra effects. Give us 5-tick big blaster. And so they gave us 5-tick big blaster. But now, the triangle has been completed. We are done. There is no more combat styles that need a 5-tick big blaster. We have them. So now they have to think. Now they have to get creative. And the community can't be like, well, just do the obvious thing. Just give us the obvious answer, which was the shadow. They could have designed the shadow better, obviously. They could have cooked it a bit longer after the first idea got shot down. And they've having to readdress this now when they add a new mage item in the future. They said they're going to rework the shadow before they add any new mage bis. Either way, that triangle has been completed. We are done with the simple, easy Mega Rares. Now we gotta think. The first few things that come to my mind are like, one, does it have to be a weapon? Probably. I think people want a weapon more than anything else. It's the most satisfying thing to be just owning something in a creative new way. So it's probably going to be a weapon. Does it have to be? No. And if they come up with something really cool that's not a weapon, that would be insane. It would be hard to balance, because then suddenly you might be able to use 2 Mega Rares at once in all situations, depending on where you wear this thing, but either way. It might not have to be a weapon, but it probably should be balance-wise and satisfaction-wise. I think they should hit there. So with that being said, we gotta get in here. Let's read more. I don't want to get too much into my opinion before we scroll down and read what they have to say, because I've been talking about this a lot. I've got a lot of thoughts, a lot of feelings on the new rewards. I'm so excited. I know they're gonna have to cook in the sense that a lot of the easy stuff, a lot of the simple number upgrades, filling in the gaps, a lot of that has been taken care of with recent content. I think they're in a spot where new, exciting, different is the angle they have to go with a lot of their rewards. So let's read what they have to say, and then we'll talk more. The Fractured Archive is coming later this year. We are here today to share our thoughts in making raids rewarding. Our thoughts on making raids rewarding. Interesting. Yep. That's just like a weird phrasing, making them rewarding. I feel like raids are pretty rewarding, but maybe they don't think so. I wonder if that's just weird phrasing, or if they're trying to up the stakes. Old School's 4th raid. The Fractured Archive is set to launch later this year. I'm sorry, I said I wasn't going to talk too much of my opinion before we get into it. They learned that 12 or 15 items was too much. I know Chambers is 12 now, but it had more when it started with the harpoon and all the other stuff. I do hope they continue with the trend of like 7 items, like 7 main items. Maybe there's some like weird account upgrades that aren't like main items, but I like the sweet spot. Like less than 10 items is kind of perfect for a raid, so I hope they don't get carried away. This is just like, it just came to my mind on the making raids rewarding thing. I'm like, I hope they don't get too carried away with too many items in one location. Sorry, anyway. Between now and then, you can expect more than a fair share of blogs and progress updates to let you know how we're getting on. But we wanted to kick things off with a bit of a think piece on where our heads are at and when it comes to one of the most important aspects of any raid, rewards. The purpose of this blog is to explain our thought process heading into reward design, share with you the challenges that we're facing, and ultimately sense check whether our line of thinking lines up with your expectations. Awesome. This is so in line with what we always get from the JMods, which is just heat checking the feelings, putting out ideas and feelers. Like, that's how we got, unfortunately, the Shadow where it is today, is like we kind of shot down their original proposals, but I think what they originally proposed will be worse than the current state of the Shadow, and at least the Shadow we can kind of, they can eventually rework to be something that's, you know, navigable in terms of design. But I love that they're constantly doing this. Just here's what we're trying to cook up. Let us know how you think. We will let you know. Rewarding raids. So it wasn't just specific wording. I feel like they might be going into like upping the stakes of why we're at raids. To kick things off, we'll keep things general. The first question we're asking ourselves is, what should a raid's loot table look like? Meaning we're less interested in the specifics of each items, but the number of items at each rarity. Where their power sits, and whether they make sense holistically. Are we potentially getting a 2 mega rare raid? There's no exact science here, it's more of a vibe. As an example, we suspect many of you would agree the following. Chambers of Zarek feels like it has too many rewards. Tob feels like it has too few. Toa feels like it has a good number. But the rarities could be shifted. Yeah, no, absolutely. I've said this since Toa came out. The Ward and the Fang feel like they should be switched in terms of rarity just because of their power. Tob has the same amount of items as Toa. Toa has all these untradables and the gems and like the room pouch upgrade. But like in terms of raw uniques, it's the same amount, but Tob's feel less impactful. They were a little bit scared of certain aspects of Powercreep when Tob came out, so a lot of their items are tuned down to where I think they would be if they were designed today. Like if the Sang, maybe Rapier would be the same because it just fits in that slot of that kind of weapon, but Sang would absolutely be designed differently. I think Justy has room to have some strength bonus if they wanted to. Like, I don't know. But yeah, they're definitely on the money here. And of course, 12 uniques at Chambers is nuts. It's absolutely nuts. It's impossible to go for a specific Chambers item. You are just gambling there. It has always been just gambling to a degree. It's so difficult. 12 unique rewards, it feels too bloated. 7 from Tob and Toa, correct. Despite having the same volume of unique drops, Tob has 2 drops that players really want, the Avernic and the Scythe, and 5 that are likely to gather dust in the bank. But, like, they only would gather dust in the bank now. Like, when they came out, Sang was Biss for the longest fucking time. Yeah, it was barely better than Toxic Trident, but it was Biss. And, like, same with Rapier. Rapier had few places, but it did have its places. They are only gathering dust because they just aren't as powerful as the rewards that are designed today. I think that is a point that I don't know if they're necessarily bringing up here, but I don't know if that's what they're trying to say. But in today's day, yeah, Sang, Rapier, and Justy are pretty much collecting dust. Justy is sick for combat achievements. Rapier is cool to wear because it looks nice. And Sang has like a few niche uses. It's really good for like 2+16s or like weird scale chambers, and has a few niche uses, but like other than that, yeah, it's not very particularly good, and it's incredibly expensive for what it is. And Toa has 7 unique rewards, all with enough use cases to make them worth picking up. Yeah, pretty much. This is the case. And again, kind of a symptom of the power creep and their ability to forego ideas of the past, which was being terrified of power creep, which is how we got like Inquisitor in the state that it is still in. Though some would argue that rarities at the various drops here could be rejigged a little. Yeah. Fang is just way too disgusting. Same with Lightbearer. These items are just... But it's hard. It's hard when you've created a system of like, we need like common items in raids, and they're like, all right, we have like a prayer scroll situation of like, there's 2 common items, and it's like a coin flip whether you get Fang or Lightbearer when you roll the common item, and it's like, well, both of these common items are omega busted. Like, if the Fang was as rare as the Ward and today costs 200 mil, it would be a good bang for your buck item. Like, if it just happened to be at that price, just picked a number out of my ass. Like, Ward is as cheap as it is because the item it's tied to is incredibly rare and much more expensive already, so it's like that item's price was doomed regardless. That item's price isn't really tied to its rarity. But like Fang, if Fang was as rare as Ward, we would just have significantly less of them in the game. Everyone would still want one. That boy would be expensive, and it would still be worth it, and everyone would buy one, and everyone would want one at the price it's at. Either way, just continuing on. With 3 raids to draw from, and countless conversations over the years, we believe that a raid's unique loot table should look something like this. Mega rare, an absolute powerhouse, undisputed best in slot use cases, a valuable pickup for any player. We think this should probably be a weapon, but we'll dive more into that later. Oh yeah. Armor set. Ideally, outright best in slot and not too niche, meaning more like Masori and Ancestral than Justy. I fully agree with this. I was talking about this before. I hope they do a melee armor. I really do not like that our current best in slot melee is a mishmash of 2 armor sets, and that our current best in slot melee is not best in slot strength bonus in a lot of cases. It's weird. I hope we get a good melee set. And 1 to 3 standalone rewards. Strong pickups that don't need to be outright best in slot, but could function very well with certain niche use cases. Elder Maul, Bulwark, Fang, Lightbearer, etc. I'm glad they mentioned Bulwark here. Bulwark is a cute one to mention and a very interesting one to mention. I was talking about this the other day. We've been getting a lot of just raw, this is an armor set, punch, weapon, armor, DPS, weapon with an effect, ring with an effect that makes you do more DPS. If you look at the Chambers drop table, there's a few items that are just weird niche. And especially if you look at the Chambers drop table on launch, when it had more things, there's like skilling items, there's like, and I don't want them to go as far as skilling items, but I like the headspace of just give them a door. It's just a big door, and you wear it, and it's bulky, and then suddenly they can't hit you because you're a door now. And it's like, who fucking thought of that? That's sick. That is so sick. But like, we kind of strayed away from that with like the hype of raids and making new items, and with only 7 items, if one of them was a door, maybe people wouldn't be as excited. But I think people over time have grown to appreciate these weird niche items that have some cool ass uses that do something differently than anything else in the game. I really hope we get something. Not another just bulky, makes me tanky, not another door. But like something interesting, something that throws the game on its head a little bit, that lets you do something in a different way. I really am glad they brought up the door here. It's a great item. Glad that they mentioned this along with all of the other really strong PVM items. We would love to hear whether or not this lines up with what you expected in terms of for a complete offering for unique rewards, whether or not numbers are in the right ballpark, are there enough standalone rewards, and are power expectations for each category roughly what you envisioned too. While you ruminate on those questions, let's dive into a little more detail on the most challenging part of our design process here. Alright, I'll try and answer these questions from my personal perspective here. Is this ballpark in terms of what type of rewards? Yeah, I think 1 mega rare is the right choice. I think if they break the 1 mega rare thing, I think it starts to get weird, and you might have situations where you have 2 slightly watered down, really powerful weapons, which is cool in a sense, but like I just don't think it's the right direction. Armor set, I don't think it's a must. Like, I think they could go different, but I think in terms of like reward progression and like the way things are set up now, I think the next really strong melee armor probably has to come from a raid or something insane endgame wise, because like we can't have another Oathplate situation where the power is just not representative of the difficulty to obtain. So I think armor set probably does need to be there. It's kind of hard to work around it. And then the standalone rewards, I'm fine if they go more than 7 items. Like, say they have a mega rare and an armor set, that's 4 items done. So 3 standalone rewards, I'd kind of be okay with more. If they like, if we want to throw in some items that people might be a little bit questionable about, or might not have as many use cases, or might be like just weird, like you have a cool idea in the design process but you don't know where to fit it, I'm kind of okay with not necessarily watering down the drop table with weird bulk extra items that you just wanted to fit into the raid. But if you have a really cool idea that fits thematically, that you're like, shoot, we can't decide between this or this, I would be so okay if the raid ended up with 8 items. 9 items might be pushing it. Like, it starts getting too rare in terms of how many purples you need to see to eventually get everything. But I would be okay with it being slightly more than 7, although it doesn't have to be, but I'm okay with it. Numbers in the right ballpark, we just answered that. Are there enough standalone rewards? Yeah, I think if you're going a mega rare and an armor set, I think there has to be 3 standalone rewards minimum. Like, I think it's 3 or maybe 4 if you have a really good idea for an extra one. Because I think if there's less items than that, we have kind of a standard set, and I think they can ideate enough to come up with 3 standalone rewards. So I think if they ended up releasing a raid that they developed for another year, and there's a mega rare and armor set, which is like, an armor set is really 1 item in terms of design, but you just wear it in 3 pieces. It would feel weird if they were like, yeah, so this raid really only has 4 things, a mega rare and armor set, and then 2 standalone items. It'd be 6 items, but like, at least it needs to have 5 things. Does that make sense? It would feel like too little if there was less. Although armor set can be, I guess they could stretch the meaning of this to be more than helmet, shirt, pants is another thing. Like, it's weird because the capes are kind of in the department of like the next mage cape should probably come from like a Colo Inferno-esque thing, would be really cool, like the third ideation of that kind of content. But like, yeah, armor set could somehow end up being 4 items, but I think people wouldn't really like that either way. So but yeah, I think there needs to be 3 standalone awards. I don't know where this 1 comes from, if they're being like mega rare armor. I don't know where this 1 comes from, because if they released a raid with 5 items and 3 of them are an armor set, people are losing their mind. Respectfully, people are losing their shit. Because it's a raid. It's a big thing. There's like Nightmare has what, 12 items? I don't know. So I don't know where the 1 comes from, but either way, I think it might just be they're just throwing numbers on. They just put a range on this, because like it. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe that is a thing in their head. Maybe they do release a raid with a mega rare, 1 standalone item, and an armor set. But that would be really weird to me. Either way, I think we can move on from this. I'm happy that they've brought up all these things in discussion. I'm glad that they're thinking about number of rewards and the overall feelings we've had over the years over bloated reward tables and reward tables that aren't bloated, but like half the rewards are shit, so realistically there's only 2 items you're going for. I'm glad that these are all thoughts in their mind. It gives me a very good feeling of where they're going. What makes a mega rare? Good question. If you can't see the asset above, click here. It is a hammer smacking a T-bow on like the Giant's Foundry thing, and there's some yellow goo coming out of it for all of the listeners that aren't looking. What? Sorry, my chair is fucking making a lot of noise. What defines a set of rewards, if not a mega rare? Strolling through the Grand Exchange, sporting a scythe, a Vitor, twisted bow, or Tumikin's shadow, and seeing PMs roll in from scammers. Don't respond to these, by the way. Acknowledging them but not banning them. Bold, bold and brave, is the closest many of us will get to feeling like a celebrity. Their status symbols capable of dishing out devastating DPS all over the game. It's no surprise that you're crossing your fingers for a jackpot every time you see the color purple. You're goddamn right I am. The elephant in the raid here is we've got 3 mega rares already, 1 for each combat style, all 5 tick, all 2-handed. So where do we go with a 4th? This isn't a blog for specific designs, but we'd like to talk to you what we feel a mega rare should be, and then invite some conversation on where we should look with the Fractured Archive. In general, we believe mega rares should probably be weapons. We've seen suggestions over the years for things like a Turmoil Prayer, a second ring slot, access to overload potions. We have all seen these ideas probably as well. I think a lot of these things, most player-designed ideas, people don't realize just how insane the power level that comes along with these things are that are just far beyond, you know, one insane weapon. And while we agree that these things are powerful rewards, we're not sure they hit the right excitement level when compared to equipping an absolute powerhouse and being able to clearly see it in action in future encounters. That's the other side of it as well. I said this earlier when talking about this, is like, there's nothing that feels better about just, like, absolutely dumpstering a boss in a new and cool way with a new weapon. It's just the best feeling, especially if it absolutely owns. Like, it is just the best thing. Yeah, it would be really busted if you got a second ring slot and you just wear a light bearer everywhere as well as your other ring. Or if you got overloads and suddenly you just have, like, 7 max hits on all your weapons and then you're just more busted everywhere. You feel it, but at the same time, it's boring. It's just power that doesn't... Nothing is different. You're just hitting bigger numbers. It's boring. So I'm glad that they've acknowledged that, because yeah, it really doesn't hit the satisfaction level the same. Assuming a weapon is chosen, we're leaning into a niche design with a wide range of use cases. Twisted Bow and Vitor are both niche, and it's easy design content specifically where they're weak or strong. Very true. Melee already has, like, its immediate, like, niches in terms of different combat styles. Scythe, I don't know why they ever gave it a crush option, but we will leave that for another day. But Melee already does that, so, like, Melee content can easily just be designed around melee defenses. T-Bow, they gave it the weird effect that scales around, like, the magic level and the magic stats of your opponent, so that's why, like, when they released the T-Bow, had to go around and nerf half the game in their magic levels. If you look back at the T-Bow, like, promo video for Chambers of Xeric, someone is T-Bowing Grardor like a 70. This is not a joke. They had to go back and nerf, like, the magic level of a bunch of things to make it so that T-Bow didn't just the entire game. So, like, these are things they can balance around. And then they were like, yeah, Shadow. It does 3x all of your stats. It's just disgusting, and it's so hard to balance around, and that's why they've said multiple times, like, we screwed ourselves over, this thing is dumb. It's just a stat stick. It's literally just a stat stick. It's fun to use. If they were able to rebalance it in a way that it wasn't just a multiplicative stat stick, but it functioned the same way, that would be awesome. And then they could design future content without it becoming way too broken. But either way, they're acknowledging that, and that's really good. Going back to what they're saying, it's easy to design content where they're both weak or strong with Scythe or T-Bow. Shadow is a bit of an outlier. That's good everywhere. Magic is good, which has come with no shortage of problems! Exclamation point. They should put a smiley face there. We feel your pain, boys. We feel your pain. We're able to lean into this by keeping these items in mind when designing future content, and if they're falling out of favor. Recent years, we saw a number of boss releases where the Scythe had more opportunities to shine. Yeah, if you don't remember, Scythe was like 400 mil not that long ago. And then they kept putting out Scythe boss after Scythe boss after Scythe boss, and then they buffed the Scythe a little bit, and suddenly, Scythe is back to 1.6 bill. It's an awesome weapon. It should be that expensive. While not mandatory, the big numbers with a slower, usually 5-tick attack rate approach tends to make these items feel impactful. The jump from predominantly 4-tick weapons like the whip, bofa, or trident to these slower 5-tick weapons also somewhat symbolizes a new step in progression and can make mega rares feel like a class of items and stand out as a cut above the rest. That's really interesting because it is really true that just going from constant 4-tick weapons to constant 5-tick weapons does have a very different feeling. And sometimes it's like, man, the game feels easier in certain ways, just having to deal with 5-tick over 4-tick. Some ways harder because you have uneven cycles, but like there's so many times where like, man, I get to dodge for 4 whole ticks before I get to click the boss again. Like it feels not only an upgrade in power, but in like playstyle, and there are weird moments like that where it's like just the simple change in the 1 tick of attack speed of all your weapons really does feel like a step up in where you are at in your PVMing, or like a change. Maybe not necessarily a step up, but a change, a new era of your PVM journey, and it is sick. And I'm glad that they're mentioning this. Although I don't know if they're like, I hope they're not too hung up on this, so to speak, because I think there is room to explore outside of the 5-tick attack range. But I do get that a lot of content is kind of designed with that in mind. So I would see it would be really reasonable if they did another 5-tick weapon. But yeah, I hope they're not too hung up on it. Let's say, because there's room to explore, but it is a very true thing. It would put it in the same category immediately of I get this and suddenly I hit like a truck on a 5-tick cycle with this style. That is the category of mega rare weapons, and that is a very real thing that they're acknowledging here, which is really cool. Let us know how you feel about the above. Are you also in the mega rare should be weapons camp, or do you think there are alternatives that feel appropriate? I'm like 90% yeah, 10% if you have a really sick idea that would impact gameplay in a way that would be really fun to use, rip it. Put that idea out. I'm like 90% it probably should be a weapon. It's the easiest way to make it satisfying, but like there's that little bit of like, come on, at least explore. At least explore the ideas, and I hope that the responses to this blog encourage them to explore that, because they might hit a really cool thing that we can get into the game. For now, we'll assume that we're moving forward with a weapon and talk through some considerations for weapons in particular that make this 4th spot difficult to fill. Reasonable. Very reasonable. Our biggest concern here is one that extends beyond just the Fractured Archive and centers on Powercreep. In this instance, we don't mean Powercreep specifically from Mega Rare on the game itself. We believe that items of this caliber should be considerably stronger in their styles niches than other offerings, but instead mean that any new Mega Rare is bound to Powercreep an existing one in some vicinity. This is true, we only have 3 attack styles, we have 3 existing Mega Rares, there's going to be toes that get stepped on here, is what they're getting at. It's worth keeping in mind that this has already been the case for the existing 3. Scythe dethroned the T-Bow at various places for content where the T-Bow is BIS, Shadow outshined both of them in a handful of use cases too, yep, very true. So this isn't anything new, but perhaps a little more obvious than in the past. Yeah, obviously, if you have 2 mage weapons, 2 melee weapons, 2 ranged weapons, and one outperforms the other in a handful of spots, people are just gonna be like, the new T-Bow! Oh, the new T-Bow is so much better than the old T-Bow! Like, we can already see the reaction, even though, like, it's just a thing that happens. So they do have to navigate it in a way that doesn't necessarily feel as bad as it kind of did when we're just getting a new style with a Mega Rare. The key thing for us here is that we feel like it's okay for a new Mega Rare to steal some spotlight from an existing one, but there's absolutely a line that shouldn't be crossed, and it's beautiful. Yeah, exactly. And it's important not to take too much space away from an established, iconic piece of gear. Yep, pretty much. So some toes are gonna have to be stepped on, but hopefully they can't, you know, come down with a steel toe boot and start breaking feet. You know, it's a dance. It's a delicate dance. Where does that leave us? Do we start cycling through combat styles so that each gear gets their time in an uncontested spotlight? It's been 9 years since the T-Bow release. Could a ranged weapon that fills a different niche be a good fit to naturally restart the cycle? We don't have answers to these, so we'd love to hear from you. Let us know what thoughts come to mind when reading questions like the above. Awesome. I'm glad they're not tied to that. I'm glad they're not wrapped into just repeating what we've already done, which is 5-tick range weapon, then 5-tick melee weapon, then 5-tick mage weapon, then, you know, rinse and repeat with new ideas. I'm glad that we're open to change, into shifts, into maybe they do a mage weapon twice in a row. Oh my god, no way, they couldn't possibly. What if they did? What if they did? That would be cool. If it's a cool item, that would be cool. I think that's just where we have to be headspace-wise when it comes to these new rewards. Let's try not to focus on what was or what should be, but is it cool? Does it add to the game? Is it going to feel balanced? That's always a hard one. But let's try not to wrap too much in the cycles and what we have and what should be next, but just what do they throw out? Is it good? Is it cool? Does it sound healthy for the game? These are the things we should be talking about, and not necessarily what is right for the history of the game, if that makes sense, of like the progress of the updates. Because we're going to get more raids, we're going to get more mega rares after this. It doesn't necessarily have to be range melee mage again. Another consideration is that for better or for worse, we feel like there's some expectations from players that mega rares should stand out in the raids that they're obtained from. This is what I was talking about earlier. Does that have to be the case? Which is the case for all existing weapons. With that in mind, it's worth talking about what we've got planned for the encounter design in the Fractured Archive. Naturally, we're not going to divulge huge specifics here, but we think our current designs and some old content school in general, Jesus, I read that really wrong. And to some extent, old school in general is more fun with melee. The added pressure of proper movement, being able to drag yourself into an NPC's attack range by attacking to weave in and out of incoming damage, just feels more dynamic than hitting from a distance. Yes, very true. Melee is, and just always has been, more fun. There are certain niche cycles. I'll point out like butterflying. I'll point out solo Olm, where there's a lot of fun stuff you can do with the range, with dragging yourself, with movement. But generally, it's way easier to design fun melee content, where your dodging isn't just move to anywhere that's safe. It's, I'm hitting the boss and I need to dodge his mechanic and then get back into the hitting the boss spot. Where, like, Yama, for example, with Mage, it's like, if you have to dodge something, you can dodge anywhere. But if you're meleeing it, it's much more specific. So that is very true. The Fractured Archive is shaping up to be a raid where melee shines a little bit more than in Chambers of Xeric or Tombs of a Mascot, and we do have melee styles Crush and Stab that currently don't sport a mega rare. Could this be a reason for us to go down this route and prioritize a weapon that's fun to use in the raid itself? Is taking this approach for a reward that's fun in the raid at odds with a more holistic view on mega rares and the overall game balance, like we've outlined above while talking with range? Okay, let's take a look at this. So they're saying, currently in design, in playing it, in the way it looks and feels, it's going to be a lot of melee with some instances of range and mage, potentially, or maybe some rooms where you don't melee at all, but it's melee heavy. But they're questioning if just because, like, melee is the most fun style in terms of playing. That's what they've said. These are the things they've established. Melee's most fun. Raid rewards have always been really good in the raid they come from. Fractured Archive is shaping up to be a melee raid. So they're basically saying, have we painted ourselves into a corner of having to release a mega rare that lines up with the weakness of this raid? That's essentially what they're asking here. They're like, do you think we have to do this? Are we allowed to not do this if this is the case? I think that's kind of what they're getting at. They're throwing the feeler out of like, listen, if this is a crush raid, are we allowed to not do a crush mega? Is that in the cards? So that's what it feels like. And I think the answer is yes, but it's not out of the question. Like, you can, if you design something really cool and you think it has a place in the game, then yeah, absolutely you can. Crush is a weird one. Crush is a really weird run. Crush is a really weird one. It's in a weird spot. It has been for a long time. Scythe can crush. If they add a Crush Mega Rare, do they take away Scythe? Or do they take away Crush Scythe? Do they rework Inquisitor to not be an adamant armor set in terms of defenses? Like, do they have to re-look at a bunch of things to make Crush not completely fucky in terms of the overall balance of this game? Probably. Yeah. The answer is probably yeah. They probably have to look at a lot of these things. Or they just add a Crush melee armor, a new Crush melee armor from the raid. And it's like, this, then the whole raid is just like 4 items to enable 1 item at that point. So it's like, it's weird. So if that is where it ends up being, it's weird. So I think they don't have to. My personal opinion is they don't have to have the weapon fully excel in the raid or have like a increased benefit in the raid or be insane within the raid it comes from. It should perform. It should be good. But I don't think it necessarily has to be best in slot point blank period. I think that is something that they could explore not doing because of the way they are setting this up and the way they are asking these questions. I hope people react in a way that elicits that response, because it kind of sounds like we're getting a Crush or Stab Mega Rare if people are like, no, it has to be best in slot within the... That sounds like what they're gonna end up doing. So like, I hope they don't get that reaction from the community, because at least it just opens up room to ideate and doesn't narrow down their field of view for this one specific reward. Plenty of questions to think over, and we're eager to hear your thoughts, but more than anything, we hope that you can appreciate the difficulty of this particular design process. While we don't want to speak in absolutes here because there's a lot of uncertainty, we're reasonably confident in saying that we think a magic offering here is out of the question. Shadow is still relatively recent. The eye has surpassed it in a handful of scenarios. We're not convinced now is the right time to add more magic weaponry. Couldn't agree more. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I said earlier, like, is there any reason they couldn't do this? Like, couldn't explicitly? No, there's nothing stopping them, but I think that's valid and that's reasonable. The eye is awesome. I hope they don't add anything anytime soon that outshines the eye where the eye is cool, because it's just a fun item to use. It's really sick. The shadow, I hope they rebalance it in terms of how it interacts with future rewards, but I hope it stays functionally kind of the same as it is, because where it's good, it can be really fun to use. It can also be kind of boring at times, but it has its moments. So I think letting these items breathe, even though Toa is old at this point, letting these items breathe for a little while longer and have their time in the sun is absolutely, I think it's necessary. What we think. We know that leaving things open-ended can at times lead to camps forming and rallying behind certain ideas while discrediting others, so we'd like to cap off the section by summarizing where our heads are at to see whether or not you unify either against or for what we've got in mind. Beautiful. As it stands, we are most inclined toward a main hand melee mega rare. We'd like for melee to shine in the raid, so having a mega rare that leads into this, similar to the Scythe, seems sensible. Crush is a style that's relatively undeserved at the top end, while the Scythe of Vitur's limited Crush bonus still winning out over a dedicated Crush weaponry in many instances. There is also an easy one to tie into the hard-hitting, relatively slow fantasy that exists... This is also an easy one to tie into the hard-hitting, relatively slow fantasy that existing Mega Rares tap into. Yeah, like, you can easily design a really, really badass main hand hammer. A crazy, like, Elder Maul style Warhammer that's, like, got some meat to it. Your character has a hefty, heavy swing animation. Like, I'm already sold. I'm already sold, man. So, like, they are absolutely right. This is very easy, design-wise, to get that locked in our brains to be like, oh, yeah. I'm a crusher now. Yeah, so I'm with them. We know there's been a lot of discussion lately around Crush in a more general sense, and we do agree that there aren't many high-end use cases for Crush at the moment. This is true. Similar to us adding more use cases to make the Scythe of Eter shine, we also absolutely are looking to consider Crush more holistically, where we go down this route, meaning more use cases, better stepping stones for progression, etc. Yeah, it really can't just be the Nightmare into Raids 4 Mega Rare pipeline. It really can't be. They need to flesh out Crush significantly, and they will, and it will be awesome if this is the route they go down. I need you guys to believe in them, because they have many a time taken an item from the depths of usefulness and brought it to the absolute spotlight. Again, look at Scythe's price a few years ago to Scythe's price now. All they did was put new content into the game. They slightly buffed Scythe when they reworked Blowpipe, but that was not what did it. All they did was pump new content into the game where Scythe fucked at. And it brought that item from hell up to a 1.6 bill item again. So they can do that. They could easily flesh out Crush going forward, but it will be a lot of work. It will take a lot of the design space going forward if that is the idea they go with. These are just things to consider. I don't think they're necessarily bad things, but they're things to consider. That's all we've got to say on Mega Rares for the time being. Hopefully this has given you loads to think about, and we're excited to hear your thoughts here. God bless. Analyzing armor. Moving on to armor. I'm pretty much saying what I have to say as things come up as we go along, so we're not going to spend 5 minutes at the end of every section capping off our thoughts, so we're just going to go straight into the next thing. Armor. Armor sets tend to occupy the rare reward space from raids, meaning you'll see pieces more commonly than a mega rare, but completing a full set can still see your kill count skyrocket. For this reason, we believe it's important for armor from raids to be best in slot and avoid making them too niche. Yep, Justy Chestplate was my last item to Greenlog Tob, and I received 2 Scythes and several other of every other item before I received a Justy Chestplate on my group Iron Man. This is very much the case. Our team also had 1 piece of Masori by the time I got a Shadow in 26 purples. 1 piece of Masori. I had Masori pants by the time I got a Shadow on my 26th purple. So this is very much the case, and you better hope that this armor is good by the time you get it, because sometimes it can be a pain in the ass to acquire. Keeping with the general vibe of the blog, figuring out a good fit for armor set here is tough. Here's a summary for our current thinking. Range armor feels out of the question. Masori is the most recent feature in the raid. Quiver, coupled with the rewards of Blood Moon Rises, we don't think range as a style needs any straight-up number increases here. Yeah, no, it really doesn't. Range good. Range been good. Range been getting better. Quiver is disgusting. Masori is disgusting. This new amulet, gonna be disgusting. So I do not think we need more range. Very true. Melee armor feels a touch more gray. I would hope so. Melee armor is in a really weird spot. While it feels like it could be too soon for an upgrade here since Oathplate is still quite fresh as a style-specific armor, Torva still maintains a high value and serves as an endgame target for many players despite not coming from a raid. Are they going to acknowledge that Torva has like 2 use cases, maybe 3? Probably not. Inquisitor likely could be improved upon, but where does that leave the Nightmare of Ashihama's place in the game? And if we went down the armor upgrade route, does Upgradescape feel appropriate for a Razor Ward? Well, they've done it before. I'm pretty... What was it, was that funny looking range armor we were just talking about? Anyway, they've done it before, but like, yeah, man, breaking down nightmare pieces into nightmare shards to fortify my crush armor. I would do it. Am I going to be happy about doing it? Not necessarily, but yeah, probably not the best route to go, yeah. Magic armor could make sense, but it's awkward. Ancestral is 9 years old at this point. Where does the time go? So it's not too soon to upgrade, but could we upgrade in a way that doesn't completely invalidate it? It's very difficult. It's very difficult. And also, they've put themselves in a corner that if they add a magic upgrade, Shadow's getting a rework before Raids 4. So that's the whole other thing. Um, could we explore a side grade that excels in a specific niche? Perhaps something that boosts the power of the standard, lunar, or Arceus spellbook? If so, does that feel appropriate considering Virtus already does this for ancient magic, but isn't a raids tier reward? I think that would suck in terms of its feeling and implementation. I think when we get so specific as to be like, it's good for magic if you're on this spellbook, would be really tough. And then they couldn't have it slot exactly into Ancestral's power level percentage and accuracy wise, because then, like, why would you ever go for Ancestral if you can just wear this as your Ancestral, and then if you happen to be on Lunars or whatever the hell, it's even more Biss. So, I think this would just suck in terms of feeling, and in terms of, like, you just wouldn't use it that much, and it would then be just a really rare raid reward that wouldn't be, I don't know. That's a weird one, so I hope they don't go down that route, but I think that is a tough one for a raid reward. Melee armor, to me, seems to be the clearest choice, and to me, feels like the one that needs it the most. It's weird that we're in this mix-match era, or mishmash, mix and match era of melee armor. Torva helmet, Oathplate top and body dominates 90% of places. There's the odd scale of chambers where you might wear full Oathplate or full Torva, depending, and Toa and next you wear Torva. It's weird. It's really weird. I don't think it looks good visually. I think everyone pretty much prefers the days of big buff Blorva men at Tob wearing the full armor set. It just looks more cohesive and badass than this, like, tuxedo white top and bottom with the fucking robot head. I don't know. To me, it's weird. I don't like it. Visually, I don't like it. Stat-wise, it feels strange having to be like, okay, I'm trying to compete for exact Scythe max hits, but then maximize my accuracy with Oathplate. The defenses are terrible on Oathplate compared to Torva, but you wear it anyway because the DPS is so much better. It's just such a weird state. It didn't feel like an upgrade. I get destroyed at Tob by the Verzik autos now. I do more damage, but every single range auto hits me through my Oathplate. I'm not tanking shit anymore. So it's like, it didn't feel necessarily like an upgrade in every sense of the word, where like a brand new Biss strong melee armor that beats Torva, it beats Oathplate, but it's hard to get from this new raid, so go fuck yourself if you're mad. That would be awesome. That would be perfect. I'd be really happy, and it would solve the weird state of melee to where, like, yeah, if you're at this point in progression where you have Torva Helm and Oathplate, you're going to be pumping, but that's not Biss. Eventually, you're going to be in this Giga Chad brand new melee armor that's just better than both of them, and you wear the full set when you're meleeing. Maybe not if you're scything still. Oathplate is a slash armor. It doesn't have to be better than Oathplate when you're scything, but in a lot of melee situations, Scythe is the only option. Scythe is the far best option. If they're bigger than a 2x2, you're scything them. You just are. So, like, I want there to be room for a new melee armor, and kind of a new melee weapon enables there to be a new Biss melee armor that you don't just see Oathplate, Torva, Terry's mix and matching all over the place. It's weird. I don't personally like it. I think it's odd in terms of progression that you're like, yeah, my best in slot is 2 pieces of that, 1 piece of this. I wear fucking the shoes from this guy. I went to a thrift store over there, picked up a backpack. Like, it's just strange. So I hope they go down the melee armor route, but time will tell. Could be the case that you see our thoughts above and feel now isn't the right time for an armor set, so perhaps we could wait for a more appropriate time in the future to fill this space. If we opt not to go for a full-on best-in-slot armor set, then what alternatives are there? I was talking about this the other day. Just a helmet, maybe. It's kind of weird that, like, we're going Oathplate, Torva helmet, but what if, like, you never wore full... What if we go further down that route? even cooler helmet, so you're never wearing full Torva or full Oath Plate. Now what? Now you just have this new badass helmet that's better than the other helmets and does something cool. I don't know. It's stupid, but like, I'm at the point of they have to get creative, so I just like throwing out stupid things and see where we go. Um, we could offer individual pieces of armor rather than a full set, like a new helmet for a certain style. This used to work quite well in the past, face guard, etc. Serp. But in more recent years, it feels like we've gotten more fashion forward and less comfortable with the idea of mismatched sets. You seem pretty comfortable with it right now! Anyway, but we offer a niche set similar to Justy. Likely wouldn't hold much value on its own, but could still sit nicely in the overall loot table with other offerings that are appropriately strong and able to offset this relatively weaker slot. There's no way it ends well, truly, with another Justy-style armor set. There's no way it sees enough usefulness to hold value and for you to be happy when you receive it as a drop. It's really tough, so I hope they don't go down that route. In this instance, I think what we think that if we're looking to add an armor set, then an ancestral side grade which shines in an elemental weakness might be a good fit. Oh no. This means ancestral is still your go-to for content where powered stabs win out, but you have a viable alternative if Chambers of Xeric isn't your scene, and we can add a little more power back to actual spell casting from the standard spellbook at the top end. Please no. Where it's been outcompeted by Lunar and Arceus spells for the majority of OSRS. I think the issue is there's a lot of fun stuff you can do with those spellbooks while you're using Mage. If you have to... They might need to add some stuff, some juice to standards if we're gonna go down this route, because, like, there's nothing that's really creative or fun about fire spell hit fire number. Oh, this guy weak to water spell hit big water number. Woo! I think they need to add some utility, some interest to where you're like casting a spell. You're clicking one of the buttons and not just auto casting the DPS spell, because it is just kind of boring in terms of the overall what you're doing. There's cool stuff you can do with Mage. Unless you're on standards, then there really isn't. You can telly around or cast DPS spells. There's also a bit of a chicken and egg scenario here where elemental weaknesses are bad because there aren't many significant instances of them at endgame. Well, yeah, you've never added any, but I think the reason is there's a lot of fun and utility in these other spellbooks. But it's hard for us to justify adding sources of extra power here because there aren't many use cases, so perhaps adding power increase here opens up some more endgame use cases for elemental weaknesses, which in turn improves the appeal of gear that strengthens them, and increases the need for you to go craft Wrath Runes. Add a good source of Wrath Runes. Why are they so rare from Yama? Why? Please. Yeah, I'm giving you a thumbs up. You have the green light. Add a good source of Wrath Runes if you're gonna do this. Please. Having said that, we're not certain that this is a strong enough option to fit neatly into a raid. Please figure out how certain you are that it's not. We're also open to not having an armor set at all, instead offering a large number of standalone items. This would be cool! Denny B! Freaking the year of the Denny B! With creative gimmicks such as the SRA or Venator Bow. Interest! Unique! Ideas! Do this! Screw the armor set. Do that. Give us 10 Denny Bs. We don't have any overly strong opinions here, so we put it all to you. Share your opinions, and we'll eagerly... I'm too excited. Share your opinions, and we will eagerly be awaiting to see which seeds take root among the community. Next steps. They're going to do more blogs. They're going to put out some specific concepts when they have them before summer, and then they'll refine designs leading up to the release. Before we sign off, we'd quickly like to say we know there are questions raised by our Summit news post around limited builds and some mentions of change to the Tombkin Shadow in case we explore Magic Reward Space. We still haven't forgotten about these, and we'll address both in the coming months, God bless, but want to make sure that we're getting off on the right foot, arguably with the toughest part about releasing a raid. Overall, really happy with this blog. I feel like they're in the right headspace in terms of cautiousness and the speaking with absolutes here. I think they're approaching this in a way that leaves it very open-ended, gives us a little bit of direction, but also lets us get creative in terms of what we want to spitball here. I'm fully confident that left in the JMod's hands, we're going to get some banger rewards from this raid. I do hope they steer away from this elemental weakness stuff, because I think it's just not as fun to play around with, generally, as having your ability to do magic damage as well as cast interesting utility spells on top of that. I think just hitting big number on Fire Guy, less cool. So I hope they don't necessarily go down that route, but everything else that they've talked about, I'm interested. I'm hooked. I'm looking forward to see what they end up cooking out, or cooking up and putting out for us. If they do another blog like this, when they have more stuff going forward, I'll do another one, reading through it, giving my thoughts and feelings. I'm not going to edit this down too much. You're going to hear all my flubs and bubs and misspeaks. But I hope you enjoyed it. This is just my opinions, my thoughts, my first read through. I kind of want to do it as like reading through it first time, as it's a bit more fun for me than reading ahead and getting all my thoughts prepared and going, especially if it's something that I think about and talk about a lot, because these thoughts are already flowing and going all the time anyway, so just reading it through and getting all the fresh thoughts as we come across stuff. I hope you enjoyed this style of video. We'll be doing more in the future as they put out more blogs leading up to this raid release. We will be pumping out KC on this raid when it is out on the duo gim. It scales down to 2, boys. It is duo min scale, so we're going to be cooking there. It is going to be hella fun. Very much looking forward to it. I appreciate y'all. If you stayed through to the end, thank you so much. Drink some water, touch some grass, kiss a homie. You can forget the first 2. And we are live every day at twitch.tv/2factorrs. You can catch me there. And, bye.